All right, yesterday we heard from the standardization executives of the military departments, their priorities, challenges, and opportunities for standardization within their components. Today, we welcome the standardization executives from the defense agencies. As I mentioned yesterday, each service and agency has a designated standardization executive responsible for assisting in the development and implementation of DSP policies and procedures. Together, they serve as members of the Defense Standardization Council. For those agencies or offices which do not hold a seat on the council, Ms. Pacell, the Defense Standardization Executive, whom you heard from yesterday, serves also as their standardization executive. Joining us today for the Defense Agency's Standardization Executive Panel are Mr. Meighen, who is representing Ms. Adelia Correa, the Defense Logistics Agency Standardization Executive, Ms. Angela Satchel from the National Security Agency, and Mr. Sherman Charles for the Defense Information Systems Agency to provide an update on their standardization activities within their agency. Mr. Meighen, please.
Yes, can you hear me?
I hear you loud and clear.
Excellent. Thank you so much for the kind introduction. As was stated, my name is Andrew Meighen. I am currently the Chief of Product Assurance at DLA for the Technical Quality Assurance and Engineering area. In addition to that, I hold the role of DLA's Enterprise Lead for Advanced Manufacturing and all the wonderful technologies that come along with that, to include digital supply chain, blockchaining, things like that, getting heavily involved in IT infrastructure. So there's a lot going on in those areas, and it's my pleasure to be here to be able to talk to you. A few areas that I'm going to cover, and feel free to stop me if you need to, or we'll get questions at the end. For DLA, talk to you a little bit about the current standardization initiatives, some lessons that we learned from some of the challenges that we've had, discuss some opportunities for improvement, things that we're looking at to make the standardization world in DLA a little bit more synergistic and beholding, hopefully, with the services to help them get to the point where, I think this entire conference is going, is trying to make things a little bit more easy over the long haul as products are developed out. Old products are still being worked with and meeting those challenges and getting items to the warfighter. Also talk about some of the standardization areas of concern where initiatives that we've been talking about kind of year over year, but I think is really coming to a head, where we think DoD should potentially get engaged in, perhaps from a forcing function perspective, but I will go over that near the end. Currently, DLA efforts and initiatives. Basically, I'm not sure the audience, it sounds like we have quite a large audience. So I'll start with how DLA is set up quickly. DLA headquarters is located at Fort Belvoir and in Washington, D.C. And from there, we spread out into three main branches, which we call MSCs. There are subordinate commands. Troop support is in Philadelphia, Land and Maritime is in Columbus, and DLA Aviation is in Richmond. Now, each one of them has a unique setup where they have standardization programs that go on 9-day over at each one of those facilities. Now, troop support is migrating their items over to Land and Maritime and Aviation, so they'll be taking on, roughly 2,000 items that are coming across in the standardization platform to, continue the update strategies that we have going on and some of the other things that, obviously need attention in the standardization world, testing, et cetera. DLA has an emphasis right now in several key areas that we feel that we have the FTEs to cover this, the engineering capabilities to grow it and monitor it as it moves out into new technologies, new standardizations, paperwork, and remember the old platforms are still around. So we've got a lot of maintenance going on there to keep those updated and current. DLA is dependent for a large portion of what we do day in and day out from an operational level on the mill services. We use their engineering to help us in the procurement process. And we are staffed with our own engineering contingent as well. And they are becoming increasingly important as additive manufacturing, advanced manufacturing initiatives plume out and more complex sort of qualifications, specs, and standards come out as well. Currently, we are spending a lot of time updating specs. I think that's a constant effort. Some of the great things that they're doing is before it used to be sort of, we do it in batches. Now we're spending a lot more time spending it on prioritizing how we're going to approach those. For example, we may start out prioritizing some of the current work based on consumption of items rather than just demand of items. That allows us to get to the items that are being consumed and get those specs, standards, et cetera, updated, current. It gets us ahead of the procurement process on the next acquisition cycle to make sure that we're integrating those updates with the military service engineers as well as our own. That does help tremendously in lead times and getting that item to the right place. The cross-process qualifications, this is a tremendous effort going on throughout DLA. I know Land and Maritime, they do a phenomenal job. Not that the others don't, but they have started this process where they really started educating their entire workforce on standardization and what it means, DLA, and the procurement process. Again, all that's in support of our warfighters. So they have started educating the workforce and being able to see that even in our acquisition areas or our planning areas, that people are starting to understand the need to ensure that we have the most current and up-to-date documents in those areas. Planning adjusts their workloads to that, which means sometimes they'll extend out or reel in lead times so that we can get that demand signal quicker, so that we can be ready for that and try and use that predictive sort of reaction to it rather than the reactive sort of mode we've always been in for decades. My hat's off to them because that's a colossal effort in the training environment where there's not always a lot of money placed. The remote inspection, this has picked up a lot of legs, especially during this during the current, I guess I should say, pandemic. One of the things that we did find out that we were having some issues with were getting inspections in place. We had a couple of high-profile opportunities, we'll call them, over the past few years, both industry and DLA, with particular vendors and the inspection process that takes place. We're looking at the remote inspection, remote verification, and teleconferencing to start defining out what that's going to look like. We will be introducing programs on the operational side, which are currently in our R&D stage right now, that will certainly help with gathering the necessary information to making sure that the vendors are who they say they are, where they say they are. Believe it or not, that's important, and exactly what it is that we expect from them, using this sort of "you see what I see" technology to allow us to maintain the integrity of the program. Geolocation, facial recognition, high definition. There's a lot that's going into this from many different organizations, from NASA to the defense laboratories, shipyards. We're bringing a lot of international experience to bear on what kind of program this might look like and at what depth. It's pretty interesting, but I believe that this will address the shrinking budgets across the agencies. DLA has a large dependency on DCMA, for instance, the Defense Contract Management Agency, as they are our contracting administration in the field. In the standardization program, we have testing, we have inspections that are required, et cetera. And what we're trying to do is be able to meet those needs when the monies aren't necessarily, or again, this COVID environment really shut down travel. And so it became very difficult for us to be able to get some of those things done. The MSCs for DLA did a wonderful job in maintaining the throughput and the capacity that they had. And we're looking to build on that and give them a much larger tool with a lot more robust capability to do what they need to do within the standardization world. Again, those are in R&D phases right now, but we are looking to make sure that we have the funding for that in the out years. A lot of the things that we wanted to do was to basically become more adaptive, less reactive. I think we learned a lot of lessons through the past years as we got challenged in the standardization areas, specifically where manufacturing, testing, validation, certification came in. We did do some conferencing and some work with AIA, did some work with some other organizations and directly with specific OEMs on how we were going to be able to tackle some of these problems. And so we got a lot of parallel efforts going on throughout the agencies, individual services, outside agencies, DLA. And one of the things that we hope to do in this writ large is to bring that sort of collective knowledge together to put together a platform that is robust and capable and helps out in the standardization world, specifically in this conversation, but less specifically in DLA and the services normal business. The fourth area that we're looking at, if anyone has any additional questions or any questions, please, I'll be done in just a moment and I'll be excited to answer them. Right now we have DMSMS as an issue. It's an issue for everyone. We heard folks talk about it yesterday, a little bit today, and sort of the morning events that were taking place about the awareness on DMSMS. Some of the DMSMS issues that we're seeing right now are coming actually in earlier stages of the life cycle than we thought on certain programs, and we're finding ourselves having to adapt and really sync up closely with the program offices as we see some manufacturing opportunities drop out, and we need to search for new capabilities. Some of those are from within, at using the services organic sites. Some of the opportunities will be looking for the new vendors that use the same types of specs and standards and drawings on other items, similar items, and challenging them to potentially incentivizing to step up and assist us with providing answers to our DMSMS problems. We're also looking at sort of linking and delinking. It's a term we use internally, but basically looking across the specs and standards in the thousands that we have. Some aren't even legible. Again, that goes back to the sort of updating that's going on. It also goes back to us being able to work more proactively with the services to get those updated standards updated and aligned with the technical data packages. So there's a large effort right there that we're kind of working quietly with some small groups, because we find that we get too large of a group, we kind of go sideways. But currently we're finding some luck in that. The fifth thing is systems modernization. It's a huge effort within DLA to modernize our systems overall. We're looking at the cloud-based open architecture. Of course, we're very aware of the cyber challenges, and we've been addressing those for quite a while in the DLA IT infrastructure, and really at the end, making the software possess the capability to be very agile. That's a word we hear a lot. But really, when it comes to today's technologies and as advanced as they are, as quickly as they move, there's a lot of ebb and flow in this area, and having a closed system architecture really inhibits growth in this area. A lot of it will help us to deal with more advanced technical data packages. It'll help us to integrate a lot more of the service programs that they have going on in the advanced manufacturing areas. It'll help us to integrate the standardization programs by having search and match capabilities and the linking and delinking options that we have to look across specs and standards, look across technical data packages for similar items, having vendors listed on them, and seeing if any one of those may be a potential resource for our DMSMS challenge. So we have a lot going on. There's a lot of programs that are going on that are not mentioned here within the specs and standards realm. I know the MSCs for DLA have really dug into the sort of future to understand better how we can grow this from something that was very sort of hands-on to being able to use technology to do mass matches, mass searches, updates to help them identify items that have consumption value versus demand value, which is still important, but to help us prioritize those workloads.